Good news, AP Bio. It's ETD 74, and we're going into some true plant nerd help, hence the glasses. Gotta love it. And we're going to be taking a look at these wonderful things that plants use to control themselves called plant hormones. One, because the AP loves it, and two, because it makes our civilization possible. Thanks, plants. Now, key things we should notice with this course. If you see Finney on his charge to the AP exam, you'll notice those beautiful rhododendrons right behind him. Man, those things are flowering. How do they know how to do that? Now, this, of course, is a true plant nerd, a professor of, botany. And man, look at the grapes on that guy. How do you get such nice grapes? Well, let's see if you can figure it out. If you look at this, it all has to do with these wonderful things called plant hormones. And they come with many different names like Auxins, Cytokinins, gibberellins, abscisic acid. Hey, it's in red. Must do something different. And ethylene, which is a little bit different. So what I want you to do right now, of course, is pause me, see if you can figure out from your long-term memory what those things were about, because you saw them on the Eco Hot Topics. And then we'll take a stab at them together while I make my ugly head disappear, right? Cool, let's dive into it. If we look at this, of course, is a true plant nerd, because what he was monkeying with was gibberellins. He was giving hormones to these grapes, which made them grow larger and faster. And that's awesome if you want to produce, say, wine or a lot of grape juice or raisins. That's why agriculture and, Monsanto have a lot of money tied into understanding plant hormones. It could be a good career option for you. Just saying, you got to pay the bills someday, right? Now, there goes my medal. One other thing that we can notice here, of course, is plant hormones. You should write this down. They regulate plant behavior, which means they stimulate or inhibit things. They turn things on or turn things off or decrease their role, just like they do in our bodies. Now, plants don't have nerves, so they control themselves mostly through the long-term signaling molecules, hormones. A good example would be this. I've got this beautiful orchid, and like the plants that are in my window at the class, they're all like growing and crowding the window. Why are they doing that? Well, the story is, of course, that plants love light. Look at that little broccoli. He's talking backwards. This, of course, is called positive phototropism. It's a positive means they're moving towards the light, and plants move towards the light. In an elegant way, they grow towards the light. Or essentially, they grow one side of their stem and swell those cells more than the other side, and that allows them to bend towards the light so they can get more light to do photosynthesis or to have their flowers develop. One of the first people that did experiments on this was a guy named Charles Darwin. He was a really curious guy. Good to be rich, huh? And what he noticed, of course, is that plants would bend towards the light like little worms, he described them, because he liked worms too. And he's like, wow, how does it do that? He tried to figure it out with experiments of cutting off the tips. And it had to do, of course, with hormones. In addition to that, he noticed that the roots also crawled and always knew the direction that the earth, the ground, the soil was. They grew down. That's called positive gravitropism. They're attracted to the gravity. Positive, of course, goes down in the direction you'd want them to. Negative gravitropism is what the stem does. It grows away from the earth against gravity, essentially, and that's why it's negative gravitropism. But either way, growing down or growing up, how does it know which way to go? It's hormones, right? And the hormone that's responsible for all those are called auxins. And they're in green because they, of course, stimulate growth and development. I always remember that auxins start with Alto, which if you've taken Spanish or you at least sing a little bit, know that that means the high or the tall, right? So it's Alto. What auxins are going to do is they're going to stimulate cell growth and stem elongation. So we can see that with the phototropism. It's the far side, the shady side, that has more auxins, so it grows towards the light. Or we can see it with fruit development. It also stimulates fruits to grow larger, and that's why, of course, we get the giant, freakish strawberries with weird hormones in them, because they grow faster and larger than they used to. If you see a wild strawberry, you understand it has a normal amount of auxins in it. And then there, of course, is gravitropism, where they can grow down to find the nutrients that are in the soil and to anchor themselves. So they're pretty darn handy things, those auxins. Now, in a slightly creepy picture, you can see that I've got this stem, and if the light shines from directly above on the actual tip, the apical meristem, the tips are the important parts of plants, then that will release auxin, which will then evenly flood down the two sides of the cells, and they'll elongate together and grow up towards the light, like they would in a forest, because, you got to compete against the other trees. In this one, it's being struck with light on this side of the stem, and that causes it to release more auxin on the shady side, because it's shaded out from that thing. That causes it to elongate on the shady side and not on the light side, so it grows towards it. It's an elegant way to control itself. Now, bio major pickup lines. I'll let you read it. I couldn't resist. Now, one key thing we can notice with this, hopefully this reminds you that auxins make things elongate. They make them grow larger, right? What's he smirking about? Now, cytokinins. Hey, it's green. Must be a thing that accelerates and stimulates growth. I think about cytokinins with their C. They're involved in the cell cycle and things you put in your cupboard, like fruit and nutrients, right? Also, you should recognize that cyto means cell. Kinins is like kinases. It's activators. They're cell activators. That's why this is involved in regulating the cell division and storage of things like starch in the seeds or sugars. It stimulates seed germination, so that's how it knows to grow out its root. If you get cytokinins, it'll do it faster. Lateral growth as well, as eventually, plants are like us. Their cells get old, and as cytokinin levels drop down, well, like human growth hormones do for us, then those cells start to die away and they start to age. Basically, it determines the fountain of youth for them. So if you increase cytokinins, you can get them to divide and grow faster. And if you decrease them, of course, or they're stressed in their environment and they release those, that can cause them, of course, to age and then die. It's how they control themselves. Hey, it's a hormone. Then there's getting jibby with it, the 3 Gs of the gibberellins. We've already talked about this guy's nice grapes. Well, that's because it stimulates not only elongation of stems and things like that, and cell elongation, it can do it inside of fruits and allow fruits to develop very well. So think of it as the Gs growing up. You're scarring yourself here, just like I always have. This, of course, is, that's plant sex. Oh, dear. This is about puberty. This is how they actually allow themselves to know when to get down with it. You can think of gibberellins kind of like testosterone and estrogen. It determines the sex of the plant. It helps determine the development rate of the pollen, more testosterone, more sperm developed in us. And of course, the pollen tube that grows down is controlled by the gibberellin as well. It also will shift the plant from being a juvenile plant focused on making food and growing into an adult plant that can then flower, which is important for angiosperms, right? So growing up, getting down, and the last one, germinating. You made yourself a baby, now it needs to know when to grow. That's the 3 Gs. Getting jibby with it. Growing, getting down, and germinating. It's like the whole story of life. Now, if you look at this little plant nerd right here, he doesn't look as nerdy as the other guy, but he works for like Monsanto. He must be doing research and must have a nice house. If we look at these plants in the back, they're growing all right. These ones in the front, whoa, something like arrested their growth. Hey, that's like abscisic acid. It arrests their growth and aging. See all the A's, right? Now, if we look at this, the job of abscisic acid is to have that counter for all this growing. It inhibits growth. So we can see we give abscisic acid to this plant. This one didn't get it. This one did. Hey, look, it didn't elongate and grow. It's also handy in controlling those stoma. So in cam plants that are closed in the AM, they close their stomata by releasing abscisic acid because they started to get into heat stress, photorespiration. That causes them to open up the channels of the potassium. Potassium flows out as well as the other ions, and water follows solute. So it's how they control themselves. It's a hormone. It also is involved, of course, in leaf aging. As the leaves age, the abscisic acid levels rise, and that's why it's abscission, like scissors. It cuts them off. So fall is the season of abscisic acid on the rise, and things like cytokinins on the decrease. Hey, that's why fall occurs. Okay, why is my fruit going bad? Well, it's not really going bad. It's actually ripening, because the more aromatic it is, the more, things will come and eat it in a forest. It's got to project that stuff out. But if you want it to ripen faster, of course, you can use this crazy stuff called ethylene. Now, the reason why your bananas are turning brown so fast and so are your pears is because you mixed them with apples. And the apples release a lot more ethylene, and that causes these guys to ripen faster. So ethylene is a gas. It's a little bit different. It's a gas that works as a messaging molecule. And that's what creates edible fruit. So you can think of ethylene and eat, right? Now, ethylene is a nice little simple molecule. You can see as you expose it to higher levels of that stuff, it browns and browns and browns. So basic idea is it promotes fruit ripening and the falling off and aging, because we want this to fall off so that something can eat it and spread its seeds. It inhibits apical growth so that you focus on growing those fruits instead of growing the rest of the tree to get sunshine. We can use this on the flowers, such as broccoli, because that really is the flower buds that you're eating. And you can induce it to, of course, ripen faster. Or you can use it on your tomatoes, right? Now, the beauty of this is if you want your, say, bananas to ripen faster because they're too green and you ain't got time for green bananas, as my father-in-law says, well, then it's simple. You take them and you can put them in a paper bag, and then the ethylene will be trapped and they'll ripen faster. Or you can stick them with some apples or some other fruits like oranges, and they'll release ethylene and make them ripen faster, right? Humans took this to the extreme. We decided we wanted to have a global economy where you could eat tomatoes that are ripe anytime you want, or apples, or anything, right? So basically what we do is weird. We pick them green, and then we store them away, and then we add ethylene when we want them to ripen. Now, there's a beautiful song about that, and it's a tribute to Led Zeppelin. It's ethylene, ethylene. Now my tomatoes are no longer green. There's a couple different versions of it. But anyway, if we look at this, we do this especially in eastern Washington, where we pick a bunch of green apples. Then we stick them in giant warehouses where we suck out all the gas and create a partial vacuum, especially the oxygen, so they don't oxidize and rot away, so that when the next season comes along and you want to sell them to grocery stores, you simply can pump them full of ethylene or take them out and let them ripen at their own rate. We tend to, of course, want to do it when we want it. That's why our vegetables, of course, in the United States do not taste quite as sweet and are not as rich in vitamins, because we actually cheat the system a little bit, but it makes a lot of money, right? Talk to somebody from South America or from Africa and ask them how good their bananas and their tomatoes are. And they're like, yeah, they actually taste sweet, because ours were, artificially ripened, so to speak. Now, to piggyback on top of that, a lot of kids, unfortunately, have wandered into these giant warehouses in eastern Washington where the air has been sucked out and they've suffocated. But it's all, for the price of having a nice, ripe, not so sweet tomato. Now, cool things are going on inside of it chemically. Ethylene is a hormone, so it, turns on genes. And basically it activates a whole bunch of ACEs, a bunch of enzymes. This will take that nasty tasting kind of very, very acidic fruit that you've been munching on that doesn't taste quite right and turn it neutral, so it's more pleasant to eat. It'll turn dull starches into sugars with amylase, just like it does in your mouth, and that's why they start to ripen and sweeten, right? It'll take green chlorophylls and convert those into anthocyanin, because now it's red, and an animal like us can spot red, so can birds. It's almost like color vision evolved to notice fruit ripening. Whoa. Pectin, of course, this hard stuff inside the fruit, will then go through pectinase and turn into less pectin, which means it's softened. If you've ever felt an avocado or a peach, you knew this. You learned it from your mom or your grandma. They probably didn't know why it was doing it, but it was an enzyme that was doing it, right? Or maybe they were a plant nerd too. Hey, my mom is. Then there's the large organics, of course. These would be the large molecules in there that start to go through hydrolysis. And as they do this, the hydrolases take them and turn them into smaller aromatic molecules that are then, that delicious smell of a fresh apple or a peach. So they all ripen. All of these things, of course, were simply because the plant can't walk. And it was basically advertising, hey, stupid animal, why don't you eat this and poop it out somewhere? Thanks, sucker. And that's, of course, why our color vision evolved, to take advantage of plants' signals to us, right? Cool. Now, stoma song. I went to the forest, talked to the trees, asked them, how do you get water to your leaves? They said, stoma. Stoma. You better be doing the hand puppet with me, right? Stoma. Now, key thing we should notice, this is a little flashback to the past. How does the giant sequoia get water up to its leaves? It's got its 5 tricks at least, right? It's going to use evapotranspiration. The Tesla just call it transpiration. You're basically taking evaporating waters at the stoma, so that creates negative pressure, so then water wants to push up from its source down in the ground. Hopefully it's been raining. The vessels connect those two systems, especially the xylem, to move the water. They are dead cells that are just big fancy straws. The phloem is for the sugar made in the leaves that brightens down. They're alive, they control it more. The stoma, those little mouths, stomata, right, the singulars, if we look at this, they, of course, give them control over this rate of transpiration, and that changes with what you're doing today. Think C3 plants, C4 plants, CAM plants. Hydrogen bonds, with their adhesion to the walls and their cohesion to each other, allow them to crawl up, because Sticky Mickey is awesome and allows this to happen, right? Water moving up against gravity, and then everything's moving here by the power of water potential, right? As we look at water potential, remember, it's always going to go from a higher water potential, a less negative water potential, to a, of course, smaller water potential, a much smaller negative water potential, right? And if we look at the outside air, that can be like negative 70 to negative 100 millibars or pascals or whatever it is. If we look at that, of course, those bars is because it's pushing from where there's more water to where there's less, right? It always goes to where there's less water, because water is pushing its way through. Do not forget, of course, those handy formulas of negative ISERT and that solute and pressure potential come in the role. But with AP Bio, we really care about these factors. The ionization is determined by, is it dissociating or dissolving? Sodium chloride's got 2 ions, right? Calcium chloride has 3, so it's got more solute particles, right? Then the concentration, which you took all that chemistry for, that's easy, moles per liter. The R, of course, is the 0.0831 bar liters per mole Kelvin. You should give that to you on the test. And then the temperature, of course, it's always got to be in Kelvin, just like in the old gas law days. The question is, to pissai your pants or not to pissai your pants? If you're a plant, it's basically the water potential that decides, but that's why you like to live in places with lots of water, so it pushes into you and into your cells. Now, key things about that, if we look, another simple idea is this idea of bulk flow, right? And what we're looking at there, of course, is things are always going to go from source to sink. So the leaves produce this wonderful stuff called table sugar, sucrose. G3P is before that, right? All that sugar, that's produced in leaves. So like good syrup, it goes from high to low down to the roots, which need that. And they can store it in things like tubers or store it as starches inside of those taters, right? And then we can see, of course, the water is going from its source to its sink. There's a lot of it in the ground pushing up through the xylem to get through and make its way to the leaves where you can use it to do photosynthesis, strip off those electrons, boost them, make some G3P, right? Cool. It's always going to go from source to sink. It's like high to low is really important. There is no suck in science. There is only push. Now, hopefully that was a little bit of plant nerd help. That guy's a lucky man. Look at those glasses. I wonder where I've seen those before. 1970s. Cool. Your job, of course, is to get yourself ready for the exam. This is my last video for you before the exam. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. Don't study all night, right? You either know it or you don't. If you're going to study before that, study your ETDs and scars, because that's why I spent so much of my ATP getting you ready for your AP, right? Get them, Finney. Look at those roadies getting jibby with it.